Imagine this. You're a Viking, standing on a jagged northern shoreline. The wind bites, cold and metallic, slicing through your furs like it's trying to test your will. The sea before you is black, restless, almost brooding, heaving like a beast that hasn't decided whether it wants to let you pass or pull you under. Your longship is ready. The crew waits, watching your eyes, reading your silence. There's no compass, no satellite feed, no glowing app with color-coded warnings. Just the raw world in front of you and what you've learned from a lifetime of listening to it. But somehow, you know whether today is the day to launch or the day to turn back. You know that a pink-streaked sky at dawn means clear weather, or that gulls flying low means a storm's already on the move. You don't need data to tell you. You can feel it. In your bones, on your skin, in the way the wind brushes the grass and how the waves hit the rocks. It's all there, a code, ancient and alive. Because in the Viking world, weather wasn't just a backdrop, it was a force of fate. It told you when to sow crops, when to raid a foreign coast, when to stay by the hearth and hope your roof held through the winter storms. The sky was a message, the sea a test, and the wind. Sometimes a whisper, sometimes a warning. One wrong read and your crew never comes back. But the Vikings didn't guess. They watched, they remembered. They shared what they saw, folding wisdom into songs, sagas, and fireside tales. They taught the signs, passed down the patterns, and trusted the voices of ancestors just as much as the twitch of a bird's wing or the scent of rain. They didn't have tools. They were the tools, and the deeper truth. They believed the world wasn't random, that wind and weather had intention. Those gods rode storms and sent omens, that if you paid attention, the world would speak. You just had to learn how to listen. To us, the sky is just there. A backdrop, something we glance at on the way to work, maybe snap a photo of when the colors look nice. To the Vikings, the sky was a map, a message board, a living thing. Every cloud formation, every shift in color, every streak of light meant something. You didn't just look at the sky, you read it. Like a seasoned sailor scanning the sea for signs of danger, the Vikings knew how to decode the sky's moods long before meteorology was even a word. Take those delicate feather-like clouds high above, the ones we now call cirrus. To a Viking, they weren't just wisps floating across blue. They were a warning. Light clouds up high meant moisture was coming. Storms often followed within a day. You had time to prepare, but not much. Then there was the sunset. A red sky at night wasn't just a poetic moment, it was a green light. Vikings lived by sayings like, "Red sky at night, sailors' delight." And no, it wasn't just superstition. That scarlet glow was a sign of stable high pressure moving in from the west. Clear weather, calm seas, and safe sailing. And they knew this without ever hearing the term light scattering. Without knowing that particles in the atmosphere bend sunlight, turning it blood red as the sun drops low. They didn't need a textbook explanation. They had experience. They had generations of whispered wisdom. They had eyes that had stared up at the same sky for lifetimes. To them, the sky wasn't decoration. It was a living calendar, a prophet, a teacher, and they paid attention. Because out there on the open sea, far from land and safety, knowing the difference between a peaceful sunset and a warning shot from the gods could mean the difference between coming home or becoming a ghost story. Vikings didn't just look up, they looked out. Birds were their living weather radars. When seabirds flew far from shore, the skies were likely calm. But if those same birds hugged the coastline or vanished entirely, trouble was brewing. The sea had a voice too. Calm, mirror-like water meant peace, sudden swells, or a dark hue. A storm was stirring, and Viking ships weren't just fast. They were built to listen, to move with the sea, not against it. This wasn't guesswork. It was an observation, refined across generations. Fathers passed it to sons. Elders told stories around fires. Out there, missing a single sign could mean disaster. So they watched, they listened, they remembered. And they survived. To most people, wind is just wind. But for the Vikings, it was a prophecy. Every voyage depended on it. The wind pushed their longships across oceans, steered them up rivers, and sometimes warned them to turn back. And the Vikings? They listened like their lives depended on it. Because they did. A sharp blast from the north. That meant icy hell and rough seas. A gentler breeze from the south. Don't be fooled, moisture, fog, and nasty storms often rode in with it. The Vikings didn't check a forecast, they felt one coming in their bones. But here's where it gets mystical. They believed wind wasn't just a force of nature, it was a messenger from the gods. Njord, the Norse god of sea and wind, wasn't just a myth. He was someone you talked to before heading out. A tailwind was more than luck, it was a divine green light. These weren't just sailors, they were wind whisperers. They read gusts like battle plans. They watched how wind filled the sail, how it shifted mid-journey, how it smelled before a storm. Every ripple in the air told them something, and if you ignored it, you might not make it back to tell the tale. Picture this. You're standing on a jagged cliff, waves hammering the rocks below, the sky bruised with storm clouds. You're about to launch a wooden ship into waters that have swallowed stronger men. No weather app, no compass, just you, the sea, and the gods. Because to the Vikings, the weather wasn't just nature doing its thing. It was divine mood swings. Njord, god of the sea and wind, was your go-to. If anyone could hush the waves or stir a storm with a flick of his divine hand, it was him. Before sailing, Vikings offered prayers, and sometimes more, to earn his favor. A tailwind meant Njord was smiling. A sudden squall, someone forgot the sacrifice. But Njord didn't rule the skies alone. Odin, the All-Father, loomed just as large. He wasn't just the god of war and wisdom, he was a strategist of fate. Vikings believed Odin could summon winds to push your ship, or send them howling straight against your sail. Appeasing him wasn't just piety, it was survival. And here's the kicker, these weren't just religious rituals. This was psychological armor. A prayer to Njord before a journey didn't just please the gods, it calmed the crew, gave them focus, gave them hope. When you're facing 1,000 miles of freezing, unpredictable ocean, a little faith goes a long way. Some modern minds might call it superstition, but for Vikings, it was a strategy, a sacred pact with the forces they couldn't control, but refused to ignore. So was their belief in sky gods just a myth, or the mental edge that helped them cross oceans when others wouldn't even leave shore? Maybe both. Let's say you're about to sail into waters known for swallowing ships whole. You've watched the sky, felt the wind, and read the sea like a scroll. But still, something inside you craves more than instinct. That's when you reach for the runes. To the Vikings, these weren't just carved squiggles, they were a language of power. Etched into wood, bone, or stone, each symbol pulsed with meaning. Some runes whispered of fate, others screamed of storms, and a few, they were believed to bend the elements themselves. Take the Vegvisir, the so-called Viking compass. This wasn't some primitive GPS, this was a sacred guide, a symbol said to keep you from losing your way, even in the blackest storm. Seafarers carried it like a shield of hope, etched into tools, painted on sails, burned into memory. You weren't just steering a ship, you were being steered by something older, wiser, and unseen. Were these runes really magic? Maybe. Or maybe they worked on the mind. When the sea turned violent, gripping that talisman reminded you, you weren't alone. You had the gods, the runes, the legacy of warriors before you. In Viking life, belief was power. And sometimes a carved symbol was the only anchor you had left. These days, you can roll over in bed, check your phone, and know, within seconds, if it's going to rain. Somewhere in orbit, satellites are silently scanning the planet, reading cloud movements and storm systems like digital gods. Algorithms process a flood of weather data while you sip coffee and decide if you need an umbrella. But rewind 1,000 years. No satellites, no radar, no weather app chirping in your pocket. Just a longship creaking on black waves, a sky that could turn deadly in minutes, and a gut feeling that the sea was about to shift. And somehow, the Vikings thrived. So how did they do it? They watched, they listened, they remembered. And most importantly, they respected nature like it was a living thing. Viking weather wisdom wasn't about educated guesses, it was a full-body understanding of the world around them. Every gust of wind, every animal cry, every twist of cloud was a message. The color of the sky at dusk, the way seabirds flew low before a storm, the smell of salt on the breeze. They read these signs not with machines, but with inherited instinct. And behind that instinct was a culture built on story. Knowledge was passed down by firelight, carved into memory through tales of survival, storms, and omens. You didn't learn from books, you learned from the old man who lost 2 brothers in a sudden gale, or the woman who predicted frost by the way the moss curled on the trees. These stories weren't bedtime fables, they were survival manuals disguised as legend. But the Vikings didn't just observe nature, they talked to it. Through runes, rituals, and reverence, they treated weather as a divine force. Gods like Njord and Odin weren't just characters in a myth, they were the unseen commanders of wind and wave. When a Viking made an offering before a voyage, it wasn't just for luck. It was a conversation, a plea, a pact, a prayer. Their belief system and their science weren't separate. They were braided together. Runes like the Vegvisir weren't just symbols, they were compasses of faith. Carrying one meant more than hope, it meant you'd aligned yourself with something older and wiser than any man. Their homes were shaped by the seasons. Their ships were built to dance with the sea, their entire lifestyle was a living adaptation to the moods of the earth. And what does that teach us? In our hyper-connected world, it's easy to think we've outgrown ancient wisdom. But maybe the Vikings were onto something we've started to forget. That survival isn't just about tools, it's about attunement, paying attention, trusting your senses, respecting the world instead of trying to conquer it. Because here's the truth, you can have a $1,000 smartphone in your hand and still miss the smell of incoming rain. The Vikings remind us that there's power in looking up, listening close, and learning from the whispers of the world. That resilience comes not from control, but from harmony. From watching the wind, respecting the sea, and understanding that nature doesn't answer to us, we move with it, or we get swept away. So the next time you open your weather app, pause, look out the window, feel the air, smell the wind, listen. And remember the seafarers who read the skies without a screen, who followed birds instead of arrows on a map, and who believed that between the gods, the runes, and the rhythms of the earth, they had all they needed to survive. Their legacy isn't just sails and swords, it's awareness, it's adaptability, and it's a call to reconnect with the wild, unpredictable beauty of the world we live in. If you enjoyed uncovering the secrets of Viking weather prediction and their deep connection to nature, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fascinating stories from history. Share your thoughts or any Viking myths you love in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take.